Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Hi, this is Bill Arnold, host of the... what's the name of the show again?
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. Say, why? Did you know that Dr. Gary Chapman has helped more than 150 million people discover their love language?
Wow, I didn't know the number was that big.
That's a lot of people in his living room. Wouldn't you say?
Well, if they're all in there at the same time, I'm not sure how he pulls it off.
Well, but that's pretty impressive. And if you have ever read his book on the love languages, we're going to take it one step further today. And he's got a new book that he wrote with Drs. Les and Leslie Parrott. And it is The Love Language That Matters Most. How to personalize love so they really feel it. Now, here's a quote from the book that I really already like. I have it highlighted. It says, love languages only work when the intention is to connect, not control. And it's not a task to accomplish. It's a matter of the heart. Attempts to manipulate love languages erode the trust that allows genuine connection to flourish. Love, at its core, is a language that only works when the goal is to give, not gain. There's some wisdom there.
I would say that and then some.
Yeah, plus. So let's get Dr. Gary Chapman on the show. Gary, I am so excited about this new book, and I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, thank you, Bill. I am also excited about it. You know, it's a follow-up. The Love Languages has been out now for 30-plus years. And this is the follow-up. And I think for people that's read the original book, it's going to really help them be even more effective in communicating love on an emotional level.
Mm-hmm. And Gary, because this book has been out, I mean, the original one has been out for 30 years, I know you've got a way to capsulize the 5 love languages just to remind people what direction we're headed.
Yeah, basically 5 ways to communicate love on the emotional level. It's designed to meet that deep need that all of us agree is one of our deepest emotional needs, and that is the need to feel loved by the significant people in our lives, whether it's a marriage relationship or a parent-child relationship or any close relationship. So here are the 5 languages that I discovered, and I discovered this in my counseling because I realized that what was making one person feel loved was not making another person feel loved. We have different love languages. One of them is words of affirmation. Using words to affirm the other person. You look nice in that outfit. I really appreciate what you did. You know, one of the things I like about you is just looking for things that you can affirm and verbalize them. You can write the words. You can speak the words. I guess you could sing the words. Oh, but words. Another love language is acts of service. Doing something that you know the other person would like for you to do. In a marriage, that might be such things as cooking meals, washing dishes, vacuuming floors, mowing the grass, washing the car, walking the dog, changing the baby's diaper. Ooh, that's a big one. It's just, you know the old saying, actions speak louder than words. Mm-hmm. If this is their love language, that is true. It's not true for everyone. But for these people, if this is their love language, acts of service will speak louder. And then there's gifts. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. You know, before I studied counseling and theology, I did an undergrad and a master's degree in cultural anthropology, studying cultures all over the world and how they're organized. We've never discovered a culture where giving gifts is not an expression of love. And the gifts don't have to be expensive. We've always said it's the thought that counts. You know, you give the gift and they're thinking, oh, they were thinking about me. Look what they got for me. And then there's quality time, giving the person your undivided attention. I do not mean sitting on the couch watching TV together. Someone else has your attention. TV is off. Computer is down. We're not answering our phone. We're giving each other our undivided attention, talking and sharing life. And you don't have to be sitting there. You can be taking a walk down the road and talking to each other. And now go out to eat, assuming that you talk. We've all seen this in the restaurant. Couples sitting there across the table from each other. Each of them have out their cell phone answering text messages. That is not quality time. That's proximity,
right,
but it's not quality time. And then number 5 is physical touch. We've long known the emotional power of physical touch. That's why we pick up babies, hold them and kiss them and cuddle them. Long before the baby understands the meaning of the word love, the baby feels love by physical touch. So in a marriage, that is such things as holding hands and kissing, embracing, the whole sexual part of the marriage, arm around the shoulder, driving down the road, you put your hand on their leg, sitting around the house and they walk by, you trip them. You know, I'm kidding.
I knew you
Don't
were
trip
kidding.
your spouse. And so the basic concept is that out of those 5, each of us has what I call a primary love language. All of them are fine. We're not going to turn away any one of them. But if we don't receive love in our primary language, we will not feel loved, even though the person is speaking, one of the other languages.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Gary Chapman is my guest. The book is called The Love Language That Matters Most, How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. If you have a question for Dr. Chapman or a comment, it is welcome. The text line is open, 877-933-2484. Gary, I am assuming that the love languages can also apply in our relationships, in our families, and our friends, and do I dare say it can even stretch into work relationships as well?
Absolutely. A few years ago, I teamed up with Dr. Paul White, who had spent 20 years in business with business leaders. And we wrote the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. We call it appreciation there because work relationships are different from family relationships. But it's the same basic need. It's the need to feel valued. I'm not just a cog in a machine. They value me. And that book has done really well. And what motivated me to write that book with him is that we had research projects that indicated that 70% of the people who have a job in this country say they feel little appreciation at work. And 64% of the people that left one job and went to another job say they left primarily because they didn't feel appreciated where they were. So that motivated me to say, okay, man, let's do it. And we've had a great response to that book.
Boy, that's pretty significant. If that is such a critical component in your job satisfaction is, am I being seen? Am I being recognized? Am I being affirmed? That's pretty important. So, Gary, let's talk a little bit about our personalities and how our personalities is going to really have a big influence as to how we're going to give and receive love, because we're all wired so differently.
Well, this is one of the reasons that we wrote this particular book, The Love Language That Matters Most, is because through the years, people have said to me, in your original book, you mentioned personalities and that they do interface with the love languages, but you didn't really spell it out. And so in this book, we are spelling that out. We're talking about personalities and how that does interface. For example, just the introvert-extrovert, personality. If words of affirmation is a person's primary love language, it's one thing to know that. But if you know that they are an introvert, then they're going to feel uncomfortable if you start giving them positive words in front of other people. They much prefer you give those words in private to them. But you see the person that's an extrovert, and they say, oh, that's their love language. I'm going to do this, I'm going to say this, and all these people, how wonderful they are, and it's okay. They understand, intellectually that you mean well, But inside, they're thinking, "Oh my, I just wish you wouldn't do that in front of everybody." You know?
Yeah.
So that's just an illustration of how personality interfaces, with the love languages. And I think again, this book's going to help people see some things they hadn't seen before in terms of how personality relates to the love languages.
Mm-hmm. So, Gary, how often will someone come into your counseling office and they're trying to use a love language that isn't working, and you look at them and you see, I don't know if you're trying to connect or if you're trying to control an outcome?
Yeah. Well, it's very, very common. And I think the reason is we are by nature self-centered. Now, there's a good part to that. That means we try to eat well and get exercise and get sleep and rest and so forth. Take care of ourselves. But when that becomes selfishness, and we either lean toward an attitude of love, which means I want to enrich the life of the other person, or we lean toward an attitude of selfishness, I'm in this relationship to make me happy, then we're choosing a huge difference here.
Mm-hmm.
And so because we are self-centered, often we become selfish when it comes to the whole matter of love. And how many people have said this to me through the years? They come in alone, and they say, Dr. Chapman, we read your book, and my husband's love language is, and they tell me what it is, and I've been really trying to speak it for 3 weeks. I've been trying to speak it, and they know my love language, but they're not responding to me. It's just not working. And I will say, well, now let me make sure I understand you. You are speaking their love language so that they will speak your love language. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, that's manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to manipulate them. I said, true love is unconditional. God loves us. We weren't lovely when God loved us and gave his son for us. He loves us unconditionally. Well, we also are called to love others the way God loves us. So we are to have the attitude that I want to enrich the life of my spouse. Certainly, we would hope that they will love us in a way that's meaningful to us. Yes, because we have a need for that. But we're not to be loving them so they will love us. And consequently, they give up. After 3 weeks, it's not working because I'm not getting what I want out of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Gary Chapman is my guest. The Love Language That Matters Most is his new book. It's a follow-up to the 5 love languages, how to personalize love so they really feel it. Let's talk about how important listening is.
I think listening is one of the huge keys in having a healthy relationship, whether it's marriage or any other close relationship. And to be honest with you, many of us are not good listeners. We talk, but we're not good listeners. A person shares something with us, whether it's a spouse or a friend. They maybe say, I had a really hard day at work today. And you say, what happened? And they tell you something that happened. You say, well, what you ought to do is da 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 da. We're telling them what they ought to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They weren't sharing that for you to tell them what they ought to do. They were sharing it because they wanted you to empathize with them. They wanted you to be aware that they've had a stressful day today, and here's what happened. And they want you to ask more questions. Tell me about that, honey. What do you think motivated them to do that? Just keep asking questions. And the more you ask questions, the more they have that sense they really care. They really want to understand what's going on in my life. And so some of us have to work at learning how to be good listeners. Others, I think, are not good talkers. Sometimes I've said there's 2 kinds of people when it comes to talking. One of them is what I call the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea receives the Jordan River, but it doesn't go anywhere. And there are those of us that have that kind of personality. We can receive all kind of thoughts and feelings and experiences throughout the day. We have a large reservoir where we store all of that, and we're perfectly happy not to talk. In fact, if you say to a Dead Sea, how are you doing? They'll say, fine. Fine. That's it. That's all that. But and then there are people that I call babbling brooks. And this is the person that everything that comes in the eye gate or the ear gate comes out the mouth gate. And if there's nobody at home, they'll call somebody. You know what I just saw? Did you see this? And if they can't get someone on the phone, they talk to themselves because they have no reservoir. They're just super talkers. And usually those people marry each other. and the common complaint of the babbling brook is, and usually it's a complaint about a man more than a woman, though it can be either. They say, he just won't talk with me. I don't know what's going on. I can ask him a question, he'll just say fine, or just a 1 or 2 word answer. And so when I'm talking to a Dead Sea, I say, hey guys or gals, listen, we got to learn to share more. We got to learn to let the other person into our life. This is a close relationship, and we want to understand each other and get to know each other. They can't get to know you if you don't share some of the thoughts and feelings and experiences that you have throughout the day.
Gary, let's go back to that scene where something is shared, and the other person says, "Well, you ought to do this, this, and this." So the other person then retreats, thinking, "Well, I don't know if I want to share again." So you end up walking on eggshells a lot. That's no fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's often the response to that. And sometimes they will say after they keep getting that, but they don't normally because they don't want to get into an argument. They'll share it in a counselor's office, how they're feeling, They're just trying to fix me. They're trying to tell me everything. They're not trying to understand me. So they'll share it in the counseling office. But if they're not in counseling, they're afraid if I come back and say, well, honey, I wish you'd just listen and try to understand where I'm coming from. You don't need to fix everything. I'm an adult. I can make some decisions, Now, here's the way I suggest the person that wants to share something to say, honey, if I had an idea of how that might be helpful, would you be open to me to share it with you? And they'll either say, no, honey, I don't want to hear it right now. Or they'll say, well, yeah, I'd be willing to hear it. But you see, you pave the way. Yeah. You didn't just respond immediately and tell them what they ought to do. But you say, if I had an idea that I think might be helpful, would you want to hear it, or would this be a good time to hear it or not? And they said, no, honey, I want you just to listen to me right now. I want you to hear what I'm saying because I don't think you're getting what I'm really saying. So, yeah. Good communication. You have to work at it. You have to learn how to communicate in a positive way.
Yeah, and that's why it's helpful to buy your book, The Love Language That Matters Most. My guest is Dr. Gary Chapman. We're going to take a little break and come back. Lots more with Gary. If you have a question or comment, both are welcome, and the text line is open just for you. 877-933-2484. We'll be right back. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 41224. Well, not every day you get to talk to Dr. Gary Chapman. He's written a book called The Love Language That Matters Most, How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. It's a follow-up to his 5 Love Languages, which I think came out 30 years ago. But if we're really going to connect, Gary, let's talk more about empathy. I was thinking about that over the break. And, if you and I have had a friendship over, let's say, 10 years, and there's a pattern in our friendship, I may have a hard time suspending that history if you come to me with something and you want my empathy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because we tend to develop patterns with close friendships. And that pattern gets developed for 5 or 10 years. And then if it changes, that is, the person starts responding or sharing things that they would never have shared earlier on, we're not sure where to go with that. And I think empathy is something that can be learned. It's not necessarily natural for all of us. because it's different from sympathy. Sympathy, hears enough about what the person's problem is and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know that has to be painful." But empathy asks questions to let the person talk, because when a person's struggling with something, in their own mind, they've been thinking about, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And so they're sharing with you because they want you understand them. Look at the world through their eyes. Ask questions so that you can eventually say, well, I can see how what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense. If I were in your shoes, I would probably feel exactly like you feel. And you would. If you had their personality and you were interpreting the thing the way they interpreted it, you would feel the way they feel. But you see, if you don't have empathy and that person shares something they're really struggling with, you might say something like, well, you just need to get over that. I mean, you just need to let it go. I mean, you don't need to let that keep bothering you. Well, you're preaching to them. They don't feel understood. They feel like, they're communicating to you that you shouldn't feel that way. Well, we don't choose our feelings. We choose our attitudes. We choose our behavior and how we respond to feelings, but we don't choose our feelings. If a person says they feel sad because of what happened, you may not have felt sad yourself if that happened to you, but that's what they feel. And what you want to do is let them share it so you can then honestly say, oh, I can see where you're coming from. I can see how you would feel that way. That makes a whole lot of sense. And now, they feel like they've been heard. They feel like you see their perspective. But it takes effort to do that. And some of us in particular are so inclined to give answers to people and to tell them how to solve their problem rather than hearing and empathizing with them. And once you empathize with them, then you might have an opportunity, or they might say to you, what do you think? What do you think I should do? What would be my first step? Well, now you can share whatever ideas you have, because now they're asking you for that. And the reason they're asking is they feel like you understand them. Mm-hmm. You've listened long enough that they feel understood. So this is essential in long-term healthy marriages and long-term healthy friendships.
Mm-hmm. And Gary, isn't it safe to say we connect at our own level of brokenness or experience? And if I had an experience, let's say I lost my job a month ago, and then I ran into someone and I said, how are you? And they said, well, I'm really stressed out. I lost my job yesterday. You would all of a sudden have commonality and a topic to discuss. The empathy would come out in a much different way than if you had never lost your job.
Yeah, that is true. But one of the problems with that is that if we've had something similar, we just listen a little bit and we say, I had that same experience about 5 years ago, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
So you're listening autobiographically.
That's right. And you're speaking too soon. They don't feel that you feel with them.
Right.
So it's okay. It's okay. We are where we are. We've all had a history. And yes, a lot of times people are sharing a problem that you've had something similar and you work through it and you have ideas. But first of all, you want to make sure you hear them and they see that you are trying to understand where they are. And then you may share, something that happened to you 5 years ago that was similar.
Yeah. Boy, as important words of affirmation are, there can also be words that wound terribly.
Yeah.
And I know that...
And negative words to a person who's they hurt anybody. But if words of affirmation is their primary love language and you give them critical words, it's like a dagger in their heart. And so that's why understanding each other's primary love language and recognizing you don't ever want to do the opposite of that. If you give somebody a gift or you give a child a gift and maybe that child disobeys a rule and you say, well, I'm going to take that gift away from you and you can't have that gift for 3 weeks because of what you did. That's the most severe punishment you could give that child. It's just like a dagger in their love tank. Whereas another child may feel like, well, that's okay. Yeah, I understand. It's okay. So understanding a child's love language is so important for parents. The second book I wrote in the series of books was The 5 Love Languages of Children, and I wrote it for parents. And I've often said to parents, the question is not, do you love your children? We love our children by nature. The question is, do your children feel loved? I remember a 13-year-old young man in my office. He'd run away from home. He ended up in my office. And after we'd talked a bit, he said to me, my parents don't love me. They love my brother, but they don't love me. I knew his parents. I knew they loved him. The problem is they had never understood that different children have different love languages. And so they were treating the other son in a way that this son saw as love, but they weren't treating him that way, and he didn't feel loved. And so it's not enough to be sincere. In a marriage, people are often sincere, especially if they read the original book. I remember the husband who said to me, he said, Dr. Chapman, we read your book. We took the quiz. Her language is acts of service. And he said, so... he didn't tell me what her love language was. I'm getting my memory messed up. Here's what happened. In the context after we talked a bit, I never met the couple. Found out they'd been married to each other for 30 years. And the wife said to me, we'd been talking about 30 minutes, and she said, Dr. Chapman, let me just tell you the basic problem here. The problem is I just don't feel any love coming from him. And she said, we're cordial. We don't argue. We're civil. But he does his thing. I do my thing. And I just feel empty inside. And she said, I don't know how long I can go on like this. And he said, I don't understand her. I do everything I can to show her that I love her. I said, well, what do you do to show your love to her? He said, well, I get home from work before she does, so I start the evening meal. And there are nights when I have it ready when she gets home. If not, she'll help me. After we eat, I wash the dishes every night. On Thursday, I vacuum the floors. On Saturday, I wash the car, I mow the grass, I help her with the laundry, and he went on, and I was beginning to wonder, what does this woman do? I didn't say that, but I was thinking, what does she do? He's doing everything. He said, I do all of that, and she says she doesn't feel loved. He said, I don't know what else I could do. I looked back at her, and she started crying. And she said, he's right. He is a hard-working man, and I appreciate that. But we don't ever talk. We haven't talked in 20 years. He's always mowing the grass, washing the dishes, vacuuming the floors. And I realized here was a sincere man. He was loving his wife in the best way he knew how. But he wasn't speaking her language.
Wow.
And it was stories like that led me to write that first book, The 5 Love Languages. I realized it's not enough to be sincere. If we're going to be effectively in meeting this emotional need, we have to learn what kind of love, what expression of love communicates love to them.
Wow, that's quite a story, Gary. I'm curious about your take on generational communications. You often hear of older people that, the parents didn't share love with them, so they can't share love because that's just the way they grew up and all of that. How do you put that into a perspective?
Yeah, well, what I say to people, for example, a man said to me, he said, Dr. Chapman, my wife and I read your book, and he said, took the quiz, and her language is words of affirmation. And he said, I hate to say this, but I don't know how to say those kind of words. He said, I never received any positive words growing up. All I was ever told was that I was lazy and I was never going to amount to anything. And I don't know how to say positive words. And I said to him, well, you are where you are. You can't change your history. But here's the good news. You can learn to speak this language as an adult, even if you didn't get it as a child. Since you know how important it is to her, you can learn it. I said, for example, can you just tell me 3 things that your wife is good at? And he thought a moment. He said, well, she's a good cook, and she's a good school teacher, and she's a good mother. I wrote those 3 words on a piece of paper. And out beside each of those words, I wrote 2 or 3 sentences. For example, on the cooking, it was something like this. Honey, I haven't told you this, but I really appreciate all the meals you cook. You're a wonderful cook. Just 2 or 3 sentences on each one of them. And I handed it to him. I said, now here's your assignment. This week, I want you to get in a room by yourself twice a day and read these sentences out loud so you hear yourself saying these things. And when you come back to me next week, I hope you can say them to me without looking at your notes.
Fabulous.
And he said, well, I'll try. Well, he came back and he was able to say them. I said, okay, now here's your assignment. The next 3 weeks, I want you to give her one of these each week. I don't care what day of the week or what time of day, and I don't care the order in which you give them. I said, now the first one you give her, you might want to say it to her when she's looking in another direction, because to look her in the eye and say this, and you haven't done it, it might just blow your mind. You know?
Right. That's sensory overload.
Yeah, that's right. I said, but then the others, maybe you can look in her eye. If not, it's okay if you don't look her in the eye. You just say them. He said, man, I hope I can do this. I said, well, listen, you just said them to me, so you can say them. And now that you know how important it is to her, I'm just challenging you to give it a shot. Well, he came back after 3 weeks. I said, well, did you share them? He said, yeah. I said, how'd she respond? He said, well, on the 3rd week, she said to me, what's going on with you? I have never heard you give me so many compliments. I said, what did you say to her? He said, I just said, honey, you know, we read that book. We took the quiz. Your love language is words of affirmation. You know I didn't receive words growing up. We've talked about that. But I'm just trying to learn how to put my love into words because I love you and I want you to feel loved. Wow. And she said, oh, that is so sweet.
Wow. Boy, that lit up her scoreboard, didn't it?
Oh, yes. Because so that's good news. You see, once we understand how important it is to speak love in the other person's love language, then hopefully we're motivated to learn how to do things that we never received. And consequently, it doesn't come natural for us. But the more you speak that language, the more natural it begins to come to you. It's like a spoken language. You know, it's hard to learn another language you didn't grow up with. But if there's a reason why it should be learned, you can learn. You can learn a spoken language that's different from your own.
I grew up watching Fonzie try to say the word "I'm sorry," and it never came out.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a little.
Well, that reminds me. I also wrote a book a few years ago called "The 5 Apology Languages."
Yeah.
Because people have different ideas on what a sincere apology is.
Yeah, amen to that. Gary, let me take a short break. I'll be right back with Dr. Gary Chapman. His book is called The Love Language That Matters Most, How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. If you have a question or comment, it's welcome, 877-933-2484. I'm back with Dr. Gary Chapman. He wrote a book called The Love Language That Matters Most, How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. It's a follow-up to The Love Languages he wrote 30 years ago. And Gary, right before the break, we were talking about this man who just couldn't come out with appreciation. So you trained him and he rehearsed, and it sounds like you were emphasizing consistency and practice, and that is all you have to do to move things forward.
Absolutely. You know, I don't ever talk about perfection because none of us are perfect, but we're either growing or we are regressing. We're getting better or we're getting worse. Marriage relationships, for example, never stay the same. We're either feeling more together and our hearts are beating more together, or we're drifting apart. If you're drifting, you're always drifting apart. And that's why learning how to speak the other person's love language in a very meaningful way is one of the elements in really having a healthy marriage. I really believe that, and I've had many people say to me through the years at my marriage conferences, I do Saturday marriage conferences, and almost every week when I do those, I don't do them every week, but whenever I do them, someone will come up and say, two or three couples will say, Dr. Chapman, we just want to share this with you. That book, The 5 Love Languages, saved our marriage 20 years ago. We were at the point of giving up. We were so different. We just ended up arguing all the time. Neither one of us felt loved. We read that book, and it was like the lights came on. And we took the quiz and learned each other's language, and then we started speaking it. It literally saved our marriage. And it's been very rewarding to see how God has used that book, the original book, all over the world. It's been published now in over 50 languages, which really surprised me because I mentioned earlier I did a master's in an undergrad degree in cultural anthropology, cultures, and I was very sensitive to cultural differences. And so when the Spanish publisher came to get the rights to publish it in Spanish, I said to my publisher, I don't know if this works in Spanish. I learned this in kind of middle America, And they said, well, they've read the book and they want to publish it.
Wow.
I said, well, okay. It became their bestseller.
Wow.
And after that, it just kept going, as I said, all over the world, 50 languages. It's really blown my mind because I knew cultural differences. There are differences, for example, on physical touch. In some cultures, if two men who are friends meet each other on the street, they kiss each other on this cheek and that cheek.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't do that in
Right.
American culture, But in there, it's a way to express, love. So the dialects are different in different languages, to be sure, but the languages, I'm pretty well convinced now, they're pretty fundamental to human nature. Been very encouraging.
Yeah. A text came in, Gary. Can Gary give more examples of learning the language of words of affirmation? Learning the language of words of affirmation.
Well, let me just share three common dialects of that language, because this is the other element of this new book, is not only do we talk about the love languages, but we spell out some of the dialects within each of these languages. And so, for example, when it comes to words of affirmation, there are words of encouragement, such as a wife. I remember this illustration. A wife said to her husband, she said, honey, I'm so glad you're speaking at your dad's funeral tomorrow. People are going to really love it, the fact that you're speaking, and I know you're going to do a wonderful job. She's giving him words of encouragement. The problem is that's not his dialect. And he felt she was putting pressure on him that he's got to be perfect tomorrow. And so he was kind of uptight about it. She had no idea. In her mind, she was speaking his language, but it was not his dialect. And so he was feeling pressure rather than feeling encouragement. And then another of the languages of words of affirmation is compliments. It's just looking for things that you can compliment the other person on. It can be something about what they're wearing. Honey, you look nice in that, Or, one of the things I just like about you is your smile. I mean, your smile just, not just with me, but other people too. I mean, I've noticed it. When you smile to other people and you're so open and friendly, I just, I love to see that in you. It's just looking for little things or big things about them, their personality, that you can give them compliments. And then not only compliments, but you can also give words of affirmation, appreciation. And this is focused on things they are doing for you, or maybe for other people, but primarily for you. For example, my wife cooks meals. I have a wife who can cook. And for all these years, she cooks meals. And we've been married a long time. We have a date night every night. She doesn't cook on those nights. We go out. But the other night, she cooks a meal. And periodically, I just say to her, honey, I just want to say it again. I do not take it for granted that you fix meals for us. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know there are many people, men, that their wives, they hate to cook and they don't cook much. And of course, I know that there are men who can cook, but I happen to be a man that can't cook. And so I just really do appreciate it. It's just looking for things that you can appreciate about your spouse. Because sometimes if this is their language and they're doing positive things for you, but they don't ever hear any words of appreciation, they're not feeling loved, and they're wondering, why don't they at least once in a while tell me that they appreciate what I'm doing? So see, if words is their language, then one of these dialects will speak more deeply to them than the other two. And so it's important not only to know their language, but to know the dialect. And you become much more effective. And I don't think we've mentioned this, but there's also, now we have already online, a premier 5 love language assessment. The original free quiz that you mentioned earlier that 150 million people have taken will tell you your primary love language, your secondary, and so forth. But on this new one, you not only get percentages on each one of these. What percentage out of 100%, which one? And then you also discover which of the dialects within that language speak most deeply to you. So we're encouraging a husband and wife to take that quiz individually so that, first of all, you understand yourself better and which dialect is best to you in your language. But the spouse understands it. They're getting information that they didn't have before, perhaps, as to what type of dialect is most meaningful to you. I'll give you another illustration, like quality time. Remember, we said quality time is giving the person your undivided attention. But we have dialects. And one of those is improvising. This kind of person, if they know that your language is acts of service, is a quality time, they just come up with ideas on the spur of the moment. Why don't we go do this together? But another dialect is planning quality time. So I remember the guy who said on Friday night to his wife, "Honey, I know your language is quality time. So why don't we in the morning get up early and let's just spend the morning together hiking up at Pilot Mountain, which is a local mountain where we live." And she said, "Honey, tomorrow is Saturday. I've already got Saturday planned." And he said, "Oh, you can move that to next week." So he thinks he's doing something wonderful for her because on the spur of the moment, he improvises this idea. And she feels pressured. He's pressuring her to do something at a time that's not convenient. She's a planner. What she wants is for him to bring up that idea of taking the hike, but then let's look at a Saturday which we can agree on, and now she's planning for it. It's in her plan now. So it really helps you be more effective when you get this concept. And in the book, we're dealing with all these in the book. And then the online assessment you can take that really, it's amazing what it does. I'm so excited about the book and the assessment.
Nice. Dr. Gary Chapman is my guest. We're going to take a break, but before we go to break, if you have not gotten your Faith Radio app, do it now. You got 90 seconds during the break, so just go and get your app. Text the word app to 877-933-2484. Again, 877-933-2484. We'll send you a link. You click the link, you have the app. It's a sweet deal. We'll be right back. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484 or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. My guest this hour is Dr. Gary Chapman, and if you've missed any of this hour, you're definitely going to want to check it out on the podcast. And his book is The Love Language That Matters Most, How to Personalize Love So They Really Feel It. During the break, Gary, I was thinking about when someone presents their best effort and it gets sort of derailed and a spirit gets crushed a little bit. How do you work through some of that? Let's say the guy shows up with Valentine's Day cashmere sweater and a dozen roses, and the wife says, "No card? There's no note that says you're special?" And he's going, "Cashmere sweater, dozen roses." He can't figure it out. So his spirits are a little crushed. Then what?
Yeah, well, and that's common, because what we do is what we think will be meaningful to them. That's what we do by nature. And if we have the idea that, flowers and a fancy sweater, is the thing that's really going to make her just bubble over with joy. But if that's not her language, it's just misinformation. But I understand his feelings. That's why understanding the love language concept and then learning the dialect of that within that language, it keeps you from doing those kind of things, because now you understand, that's not what would made her feel. Her language probably is words of affirmation. She wanted a card that said something positive about her.
Right. Right.
She was dying for him to give her a card that really gushed with words that were meaningful to her. He was giving her things. He was giving her gifts. And she was dying for words of affirmation. She appreciated the gift, probably, but it wasn't wasn't her primary language or dialect.
Mm-hmm. Gary, talk about how we're not trying to rush to get it right, but we need to learn how to embrace the process. I think that's important, because you can feel like a failure pretty quick, but if you understand it's a process and you're not trying to rush to get it right, you might relax a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to recognize that all of life in a relationship, we want to be growing, and that means we're learning. My wife and I through the years went to marriage conferences here and there, especially in the several younger years of our marriage, and we had this concept that if we learn one thing at a marriage conference that would help us in our marriage, it was worth going to the conference. Or we shared a book, and now I challenge couples every year, share a book on marriage. And here's what I mean by share a book. Each of you read the same chapter, and then you say to each other, "What can we learn from that chapter that would help our marriage?" And you just work through the book. There's enough good books out there, Christian books out there on marriage. You have one the rest of your life if you've married 60 years. It's just a way of having new ideas, putting in the mix in your marriage. So if you don't read a book, share a book together, or go to a marriage conference and talk about what can we learn from that, chances are you're not going to be learning as quickly as you could learn if you were exposing yourself to those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. A question that came in on the text line about my 18-year-old daughter in her first relationship, and I wanted her to get the five love language book, but wasn't sure if I should get the teen or the regular edition. What are your thoughts?
I would say if she's dating, I would give her the 5 love languages for singles.
Okay.
Because it's written specifically to singles. It talks about how this relates to their parents, a love relationship with them, how it relates to dating partners, how it relates to if people, close friends, close friendships. So I think 5 love languages of children for singles is the one I'd suggest for her.
Mm-hmm. And this has been quite a journey you've been on with the love languages, and I love the fact that this whole thing started off organically, where you go over your counseling notes and come up with these 5 love languages, because it really has application to just about everybody, Gary.
Well, I think it does, and I think that's why that book has been so successful, is because it's addressing what almost everyone agrees is one of our deepest emotional needs on the human level, and that is the need to feel loved by the significant people in our lives. And if you're married, the person you would most like to love you is your spouse. If you feel loved by your spouse, life is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But if what I call the love tank is empty, life begins to look pretty dark.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's so important. And to have a growing marriage, then you want to be growing in your effectiveness of communicating love in a meaningful way to the other person.
Gary, we just have about 20 seconds left, but you had a good working relationship with Les and Leslie Parrott.
I did. I've known them for a long time, and we've spoken together a few times through the years. But I really enjoyed working with them on this book. He's a psychologist, a Christian psychologist. She's a marriage and family counselor. And of course, they've written several books themselves. And so I really enjoyed working with them on this book.
Yeah, well, it's been great. It's been great having you on the show over this last hour. Thank you, Gary, for your work and your commitment to helping people love each other better. It's been great having you on.
Well, thank you, Bill. I enjoyed being with you, and keep up the good work you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We will take a short break and be back with more in just a minute. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
What if the deepest wounds in your story could lead you closer to God?
I just had this strong sense that this was the beginning of a new life for our family, a new creation story.
What if the fear that holds you back is the very thing Jesus wants to heal?
Where did you learn that fear? Because you did not learn it from God.
My name is Susie Larson, and on my podcast, Susie Larson Live, every weekday we open the mic for honest conversations about faith, healing, health, and identity in Christ.
With your DNA, you are a victim. With my DNA, you are more than a conqueror.
Whether it's trauma, temptation, or the lie that says you'll never be free.
I'm prone to go to slavery, to go back to laws, but what we really want is freedom.
We talk about grief and grit, mental health and miracles, healing and holy expectancy, because you were made for more, not just to survive, but to live deeply, love bravely, and walk boldly with Jesus. Susie Larson Live. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Susie Larson Live.